Let's take a look at what it takes to add IBM Cognos 11 into a Digital Hive environment. Adding Cognos is a three-step process, and the first process is to actually go in and add a new connector type. So in this case, we'll choose IBM Cognos. Here's where you actually would choose whether you're using single sign-on with Cognos or just default username and password. In our case, we are using a default username and password scheme. So I will go in and add a set of credentials. Now these credentials are for the indexing to occur. This isn't a master credential that everybody uses. This credential is just there for the purpose of indexing so that users can actually search for content. So now that we've defined what the security context is going to be, let's go in and add some settings. So in this case, we're going to add a dispatcher URL. We're going to paste in the dispatcher URL. And what I'm just going to do here, I'm just going to take this and make that the path. And then we'll specify that as the dispatcher. Then we'll add a second set, and we'll call it gateway. And I will type in the URL. All right, and then the path will be the standard default /IBM Cognos /BI/, and then that will be the gateway. And that's really it for Cognos. That is the two parameters that are required for connecting to Cognos. And we'll go ahead and apply that now. All right, so now that we've actually added our connector, let's go in and test out the connection. All right, so it says that we've successfully connected to IBM Cognos Analytics. Perfect. You'll also notice here there's a little warning message, and that's because during the connection details, I actually chose to not store the credential because that was the master credential. So I'm going to go into the profile settings, and I'm going to add my own credential. So I'm going to go in and specify my sign-in, and you'll see the namespace is available through a drop-down, and we'll hit add. Okay, so now my connector or my connection has been added to my profile. You'll see that the little warning indicator has gone by. Now what you'll be able to do as a second step is we actually have to go in now and tell Digital Hive what parts of the Cognos content we want to enable. Now I can do it right here at the root, for example, and bring in everything from my folders and team content. But let's just choose something a little different for the experience. Let's go in and say we only want, say, samples. Right? So I'm going to go in and say just the sample. Any of the content within samples I want to make available. And if you want to go into advanced, you can actually modify when the indexing occurs. But let's just hit add. And say I want a secondary folder as well. So not just the samples. I'll go in and I'll add let's see, banking reports. Let's add that one. Okay. So now I actually have two parts of the Cognos content structure included in Digital Hive. Now again, it's not an all or nothing process. You can say, what parts of the, the experience you want into. It could be all the Cognos content, or it can just be certain parts of the hierarchy. In this case, banking reports and samples. I've adjusted the, or I left the default scheduling for the indexing, and I'll hit OK. Okay, that's the second part of the process. Now, the last part of the process is we've connected to Cognos. We've specified which content we want to make available. We have to determine now how we want to lay out the content for our users. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to create a new folder here. And I'm going to call it, let's say, Cognos users, for example. Okay. And I'm going to link it to a content folder. So there is my Cognos structure. And maybe I want my samples to be available in this Cognos user folder. So I'm going to hit add. So now we have a Cognos folder. And if I browse into it, you'll see all the content from the samples. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to add a secondary, we had that banking reports as well. So I'm going to go into, say, marketing. Let's go to marketing users here. And I'm going to add a new folder. And I'm going to call it banking reports. And again, I'm going to link to the content. And let's find Cognos. And there's my banking reports folder. I'm going to add that content there. So you see why it's a three-step process now. where we define the connector. You actually specify which content you want to make available to Digital Hive, again, all or a subset of your content. And then the last and most important piece is, where do you want that Cognos content to appear within the Digital Hive structure?